Hello, this is Anna Imagination with the Healing Garden. I need to turn on my light because it is really dark here, so just give me a moment. I was not expecting it to be that dark. I'm like, oh, that's too dark. So if you are new to my channel, I am a philosopher of 30 plus years, an ontologist, and a plethora of many other things. I am a Renaissance man, and I've been integrating a lot into my studies and basically put together a program that cured my mental illness. And I now make that program available to people so they can make use of it. I am huge on DIY self-teaching and DIY healing. Huge. That is like the thing that I do. I am a firm believer that the situation of the world today is too severe, and it's not possible, nor is it healthy, to spoon feed people the healing and the teaching that we do. And I grew up in the 80s, Generation X, where children were over neglected, which taught me how to be over independent, which had its own trauma symptoms that resulted from it. However, it did give me a massive amount of skill sets that I used to implement into my own studies. And with my studies, with the work that I've done, and with everything I'm doing, it was a massive realization very early on that self-teaching is the core to life functioning. And I'm starting a new series today called Comfort, Learn, Save. And these words are chosen very, very effectively, very, very specifically for many reasons. All of healing and all of trauma, all of life really come down to three constant things over and over again. People don't know how to comfort themselves. People do not know how to learn. And people do not know how to save themselves. And anyone with a mental illness suffers from these three problems over and over again. Every single mental illness, no matter what, comes down to these three problems. And I will prove it right now. If you know how to comfort yourself, then you're fine. If you know how to calm yourself down, you're fine. You don't suffer from anxiety. If you know how to comfort yourself, you don't have a problem with stress. You don't have a problem with anxiety. And as a result, you don't have mental illness. If you know how to effectively comfort yourself, you're fine. If you know how to learn, then you know how to problem solve. If you know how to learn, then you know how to solve your problems, including solving what you need to figure out to resolve your mental illness. Almost no one knows how to learn properly, not even the professionals, which is why almost everyone has mental illness. No one with a mental illness knows how to save themselves. This is primarily because they don't know how to problem solve or learn, and also because they don't know how to comfort themselves. If you knew how to comfort yourself, and if you knew how to learn, then you would get the answers, comfort yourself, and save yourself. Not being able to save yourself or believing you can't is a direct consequence and a symptom of you don't know how to learn, problem solve, and you don't know how to comfort yourself. These two skills are learned in the first ethical perspective stage of growth, which most of us never learned properly because of trauma, because parents interfered with our development. As a result, we never internalized the very first lesson of the first ethic. The first lesson of the first ethic is courage and the ability to comfort yourself and your ability to manage your own lifestyle, to use discernment when it is you need to comfort yourself. As a result, these never took place. They often don't take place because of one, an over nurturing caregiver, which is a form of enabling, which disabled you. Enabling disables, and it is a form of spoon feeding. Spoon feeding, over nurturing, or this enabling basically puts a person in a position where they never ever comfort themselves. They never get exposure to discomfort, to learn that discomfort is okay to have, and they never learn how to pick up the spoon themselves. As a result, there are two kinds of people in the world, and I do mean two. There are DIYers and the people who need to be spoon-fed. The DIYers are the ones who heal and figure shit out because they are the ones who learn how to learn. And then there are people who were spoon-fed. The problem with the spoon feeders is they lose the very first thing that they need, which is the ability to learn, which you get through trial and error. But emotions get in the way. This is very common with infants. An infant that is allowed to cry has to learn also how to calm themselves down. But if a child is never allowed to cry, the child never learns the skill of how to calm myself down during chaos and fix the problem. Fixing every problem comes down over and over again to problem solving. It is literally an emotions versus logic fight that takes place in every single person. It's emotions versus your logic, period. There is no negotiation here. This is a basic thing that every human being has to overcome. And if they don't, they have mental illness. If you did not learn how to calm your emotions enough to problem solve, you're going to develop mental illness. It comes down to this. The emotions also come with the other emotion, courage. So if you never learned courage, you never overcome fear. Fear is actually the emotion that teaches you need to be learning. Whenever you feel fear, it is literally the it's time to learn emotion. However, many of us have trauma with learning. So instead of learning, we run away because we lack courage. So there is this fear, courage, learning cycle that's taking place that gets disrupted in early childhood and development, usually by an over-nurturing mother. As a result, you have substantial fear, you don't learn, you lack courage. You have more fear, you learn less, you have less courage, you have more fear, and it cycles and spirals out of control. When you problem solve and when you find courage, you actually reverse this. And courage cures fear, learning cures fear, and the fear diminishes. So this can either go one of two ways. You can either use courage and learning to soothe fear and get rid of fear, or fear trumps learning and courage, and you end up with a surplus of fear. So if you are somebody who struggles with fear, it is because you have not learned how to learn and problem solve. To do that, you need logic, basic deductive reasoning. I need to calm myself and comfort myself in order to learn. And this is a basic core at the heart of every single trauma. This is it. So this series, Comfort, Learn, Save, is all we're going to be talking about. This is it. I am going to be talking about money trauma today because that is a huge part of this. And money trauma is actually a symptom of another bigger problem, which is linked to this. So this is all going to tie it together. Now, the big thing is, how do you comfort? And this is where a lot of people don't know how to comfort. You need two things to comfort. You need to energize yourself, and you need to ground yourself. When you combine these two tools, you're comforting yourself. All comforting is just energizing and grounding. To energize yourself, you are using the emotion joy. Joy is the only emotion that energizes. Without joy, you get drained. It 100% drains you, which is why when you go to a job you hate, you feel drained and tired all the time. If you go to school that you hate going to school, you feel miserable, you hate it, you feel tired and drained all the time. It's because there's no joy. When you add joy to it, you feel energized, empowered, you feel strong. 100% of all energized emotion comes from joy. Joy comes from what you love, which also grounds you. So it's literally doing what you love to give you joy, which will ground you and energize you. And then you will have the ability to problem solve, face your fears, have courage, go on an adventure, and have excitement. The problem is many people have a severe deficit of these two emotions. Because there is a deficit, it takes a substantial amount of joy and love to get them back up to a functioning level. So what we see a lot of is people literally at such a severe deficit that they think, I'm going to do 5 minutes of it and I'll be fine. I'm going to do a day of it. I'm going to do 2 days of it. No, you are like 6 months deficit, 2 years deficit. Big difference. When I came out of my slave situation, I was a slave for 40 years. When I got out of it, 3 years. 3 years of nothing but joy and love. And I do mean nothing else. 3 years. That is how deficit I was. So people will go into the joy and the love, and they'll do it for 2 weeks. They'll do it for a day. They'll do it for a weekend, and they go, I don't understand it. This is why when you go on holiday after, like you go on a 2-week holiday, and then you start to feel good, and then you go back to work and you feel like you never, it's because you have such a deficit that 2 weeks doesn't even begin to cut it. You need literally like 6 months. It's extraordinary, the amount of work. So joy and love, or I should say, it's extraordinary, the amount of imbalance that people are doing so much of what they hate that they have such a significant lack of joy and love that they are months and years in the deficit. So turning this around is stage 1. But stage 2 is going to be indulging. A very core part of the human learning, and this is something I was thinking about this morning. This is the core of all learning and education that most people, including educators, know nothing about. 100% of everything a human being learns is through indulgence and avoidance, then integration. This is the learning, teaching, education process. It is literally found in physics, philosophy, psychology even talks about this, and in economics. And when you combine these 4 subjects, oh my God, it's in everything we do. So there is stage 1 of learning, which is indulging. Stage 2 is avoiding. And stage 3 is integrating. Now, human beings and our great genius decided to come up with something really fucking stupid called gluttony. Gluttony, supposedly, there's 2 definitions. There's the original definition, which absolutely has nothing to do with what most people think it does. And then there's the modern common usage, which is wrong. The common usage people think is indulgence. No, it's not. So as a result, a lot of people use gluttony as an excuse to avoid indulgence. As a result, no one is indulging. As a result, everyone has scarcity. This is one of the dumbest things human beings have done to ourselves. This is like at the epitome of our stupid. It's 100% self-sabotage. So you have to indulge. And then when you get a surplus of indulgence, we call this potential energy, then it switches over to avoidance. And then this is kinetic energy. And while you're avoiding, you're actually indulging in thing number 2. After you indulge in that, then it switches over to an integration mode where you take both components, you integrate them, and you learn. But because gluttony is such a, oh, we don't touch that, it's a deadly sin, we don't do that, which is why no one's learning. So as a result, we try and integrate and we pace ourselves, but we can't learn that way. That's not how we learn. In psychology, there is something called a C drop. There is an A point and then a B point and then a C point and then a D point. I'm going to alter this thing a little bit. We're going to change it around a little bit. A is actually indulgence. It's when you have things going your way. C is when it rains, it pours. And that's when you have a really bottomed out drop. That's actually avoidance. And then D is when you integrate A, B, and C to get this great, wonderful balance. So we're going to throw out the C drop, and we're going to, again, alter a little bit. What it really is a swinging pendulum of indulge to this, to integrate both. Yin yang, balance. So again, it's indulge, and then integrate. While we are avoiding over here, avoiding the A, indulgence, we are indulging in B, and we're starting to realize, oh, a balance is nice. I ate a whole lot of Dorito chips, nothing but Dorito chips for like 3 weeks. I'm sick of Dorito chips. Now I want vegetables. See that? I learned. Now I'm going to probably gorge myself on vegetables for the next month and just eat vegetables. And then I'm going to integrate and realize, oh, junk food is nice sometimes. It's how we learn. But if you do not allow the indulgence of A, you're never going to swing. This is what happens with money. This is what happens with scarcity mindset. This is why everyone has scarcity mindset. I have no tolerance for gluttony. I have no tolerance for the 7 deadly sins because it disrupts this like crazy. When you indulge, you are building up on potential energy, and you're supposed to store it up until you get to the emotion of boredom. But we don't do that because of gluttony, so we don't indulge. We have a lot of parents who say, oh, no. Parents are the number one problem here. Number one problem. They are the ones who go, you can't indulge. You can't have too much candy. You can't have. And every great parent I have spoken to doesn't do this. Every fucking great parent does this or does not do this. They are the ones who say, you want candy? Help yourself. Go ahead. Indulge. Because they understand that you have to indulge and gorge to get sick of it, to go over here, and then you integrate. Now, what's going on when you interrupt this process is this. Now we have parents are the first offenders. The second offenders is teachers, and the third offenders is the self, which, because of law of physics, and we have the mirror reflection of everything we learn is a mirror, we are just reflecting what our parents and our teachers taught us, which is the wrong lesson. So this is how this works. In economics, there is something called supply and demand. We call this something else in physics. We call this stored potential energy, transferred over like a battery into a surplus of a different kind of battery. Well, to avoid surplus. In fact, you cannot have a surplus of positive or negative. That's how you destroy atoms. That's how you have an atom bomb, is literally that right there, is you have a surplus of, it's unstable and it's reactive. Physics. So supply and demand literally is like, it has to be balanced. Exactly like a battery has to be balanced in the potential energy, the positive, the negative energy, just like potential and kinetic energy. You cannot have a surplus of potential energy. When you have a surplus of potential energy, it becomes unstable and reactive. And then it explodes, which is why a lot of people who do not manage their emotions properly have a surplus of their potential energy, potential emotional energy. They are not siphoning it properly over to kinetic energy, and they explode. That's what explosive anger is. It is the inability to properly manage their own, or the lack of knowledge of how to manage their own emotions. And as a result, they have a surplus of energy. Same thing in supply and demand. If you have a surplus of supply, you're going to have a problem. Look at the Topps baseball cards in the 1980s. Dipshit. This is the dumbest supply and demand move ever made. This is a whole bunch of idiots trying to make a really stupid decision. So baseball cards used to be really, really valuable. Really, really amazing. I used to collect baseball cards. I love fucking baseball cards. And back in the 1980s, Topps, the largest brand of baseball cards, made the dumbest fucking stupid idea ever. They decided to meet the demand. So they made a surplus of baseball cards in the 1980s. If you were to go out and buy baseball cards in mint condition right now, it's probably going to be the entire collection Topps for $20, and it's from the 1980s. This is why. And they're garbage. They're like 20 cents. They're not inflating because there's so many of them. So throughout the 1980s, Topps ended up meeting the demand. When they met the demand, the value of baseball cards tanked. They're garbage because the demand was fulfilled. They are marketers in business, and they literally ignored one of the primary laws of supply and demand, which was if you want a rare item, you cannot meet the demand. You have to keep it rare. Really fucking stupid move on their part. And as a result, it tanked their company. They've been trying to recover since, and they haven't because of this stupid marketing move back in the 80s. So don't meet the supply. You have to have a balance. Again, you can't. With supply and demand, you're supposed to have a nice balance. You're supposed to have a nice balance with everything. But that's not learning. Humans aren't born instantly in supply and demand. We have to learn the lesson. So every single lesson we learn is the indulgence, the avoidance, and then the integration. Now, a lot of things happen during this process. The very first thing that happens is the emotion, appreciation, and value. By the way, if you're at all knowledgeable in economics, those words are borrowed from that for a reason. 100% of our emotional words are borrowed from either physics or economics because it's the same thing and they follow the same laws and rules. A lot of people don't know this. So you have appreciation and value, which you only get through indulgence. Because what you are doing is you are tipping the scale of supply. If you are a psychologist, if you know anything about psychology, you really need to study economics. And this is why. When you have appreciation and value, in order to get that, you have to indulge. You have to literally have a high supply. And then you have such a high supply that you gluttony yourself and you're sick of it. So you switch, you change priorities. After you shift priority, this is actually how you shift a perspective, is you are indulging and then you shift perspective. That allows you to change your priority. It changes your values. It changes your ethics. You appreciate the thing that you've been avoiding. For instance, I've been indulging on Dorito chips. Now I appreciate vegetables. So now I'm shifting my priority from Dorito chips over to vegetables. I'm at a point where when I eat Dorito chips, they taste disgusting to me. That's how much I've indulged. So now I'm switching my priority to, my God, do I really want carrots and broccoli and little cherry tomatoes? Really bad. So that's now over here at X, and that is under the next indulgence. So now I'm going to indulge on vegetables because I now appreciate them. Now I value them. Now they are high in value. And when I indulge in those, I'm going to get to a point probably in 3 weeks where I'm sick and tired of them. And I'm going to want a nice balance of, okay, I want a variety of health food with just a little bit, not Dorito chips, just a little bit of like a snack food. So probably popcorn, but it's going to be like lightly salted. Like, yeah, you see where I'm at. So when that happens, you then integrate. And this is the learning cycle. When you are in the C drop, you are very much in the second stage of indulgence, which is also avoidance. Now, when you're in the are you just listening or are you needing something? What? Oh, she just stands right here and I'm like, yes. Like I can feel her energy just like merging with mine. And I'm like, okay. So when you have the I'm mother first, I work second. So you have the integration, you have indulgence A, and then you go indulgence B while you're avoiding A, and then I do appreciate both. But you have to go through this process. And then you integrate. And when you integrate, that's when everything comes together. It's a beautiful, beautiful marriage. When you are integrating, you are also mostly subconsciously avoiding something else. So that when you're learning to integrate, you are literally learning to come to appreciate something else. So it's constantly a balance between appreciate, avoid, indulge. And that emotional connection over and over again is what pushes us through the learning process. This is what drove me through my education. 100%. All of this is what drove me through my education. I indulged on music until I never got sick of music. I indulged on music. No, I never got sick of music. Maybe this was a bad example. I indulged in the arts. I did want variety. So I indulged until I wanted to add something new to it. So then I added physics to my music. And then I added lyrics to, it was the type of music I indulged in. That's what I did. All right. So I indulged on opera. And then I indulged on Broadway. And then, I found Phantom of the Opera and that merged them together. And it was wonderful. I'm like, yay, Broadway and opera. I'm so happy. And then after that, I indulged on lyric writing, which allowed me to indulge on writing. And then I went back to music writing. So I toggled between music writing and lyric writing for quite a while. And there's that indulge and avoidance again. And then I realized that there was too much art, and there was too much art in my life. So I wanted logic and math. But I was not going to appreciate logic and math until I indulged in the arts. So I indulged in the arts until I wanted logic and math and physics. And then I went back after that and I integrated the art with the logic and the physics. When I did that, I was neglecting communications. Then I indulged in language, which helped with my opera because I loved Italian. So I indulged in language. That allowed me to go on this massive education tangent of learning language. And then it got me into history. So language then led to history. This is literally how I learned. But because I did not have someone telling me how to learn, what to learn, when to learn, they didn't interfere with this process. So I was free to indulge in A, to go over to the avoidance and indulgence of B, to learn to integrate, which then taught me the next thing. By the way, this is every single person. This, from art to math to language to history. After that, you go to science. Well, actually, after that, you go to philosophy. And then after that, you go to spirituality. And then you go to science. That is the path. That is the path. Everyone does it. If people leave you the fuck alone and you're allowed to indulge. But they don't. So this does not happen. Every child starts up with those pots and pans on the floor and we're all beating them. Every fucking one of us did this. Every one of us did it. Cavemen did it. We beat drums. That's where it starts. That is stage number one. You've got parents who, oh my God, my daughter with her tap dancing. Every child beats on drums. Every child dances. Every child draws on the walls. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. When you were an infant, you were 2. You're not going to remember, sweetheart. But no, it's just that I didn't do that. Everyone does. It's in our brains. You've got parents who are abusive about this. You are parents who grit their teeth and deal. You've got parents who say, you know what, I'm going to be smart about this and put you in another room. And you've got people who are horribly aggressive with their children. My daughter went through a tap dancing phase. So she put on the most clackiest shoes she had for a year and followed me around dancing loudly. She was not in tap classes. She wanted to be, and we didn't have the funds at that point. And I'm going, so it was a year of hearing clackety clack, her dancing and tap dancing. Every child goes through these stages. Now, the problem is most parents say, I don't want you to be a starving artist. You're not allowed to do that. And they derail it. And then that process never takes place. And then we are shoved over into a structured learning criteria, and this never takes place. What's amazing, and this is what I love, is Plato's curriculum is literally designed around this process. And every one of these subjects is the foundation for the next. Every single one of them. Music is the foundation of physics. Music is the foundation of physics. If you are studying physics and you haven't studied music, you're going to have a big problem with understanding physics. It's going to be more difficult. In fact, every physics book has let's talk about music, because they have figured this out of, Einstein played the violin because he knew. I played the piano, 4 years old, and I started playing the piano. You have to have a foundation in music to be a physicist. Art is the foundation to all of this. You cut out art, thank you, government. You cut out art, you're done. You can't go through this process. So in addition to our government cutting out our art back in the 90s, they also disrupted this entire cycle, which is why the education has tanked. And we are still not allowed to indulge and then switch over to the avoidance. This is learning. This is how we learn everything. We have a really bad relationship. And then we go, okay, I'm going to avoid relationships for a while. You know what? Maybe I'm going to integrate myself with a healthy relationship. And maybe I need a balance of it. This is how you learn codependency. Codependency is an indulgence. You're supposed to swing over to the next, but trauma has happened. So you get stuck in indulging on a partner who you think you need. Now you can't get over. It's because you have disrupted the cycle. Trauma has disrupted the cycle. So when trauma disrupts this indulge to avoid cycle, you don't learn anymore. So a lot of us walk away going, I hate learning. This is why. And a lot of us walk away going, I can't learn. This is why. It's because no one has taught you that this is how we learn. Educators don't even know that this is how we learn. They interfere with this. So the only one who I have seen with evidence who actually knows this is Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, Pythagoras. They knew it. And they were fucking good teachers for a reason, because they knew this. This is what I used to self-teach. This is how I managed to cram like a stupid amount of degrees into my head because of this. So we're going to go through this. If this cycle gets disrupted, and almost every one of us has it disrupted, we get stuck in either pendulum side left or pendulum side right. Now you have black and white thinking. And this is why. This is right here. It's because you're either stuck in indulgence or you're stuck in avoidance. And you forgot to swing to the center and integrate. So we're supposed to learn like this. And then you get traumatized and you get stuck. And now everything is against you when you were over here and you got black and white thinking. It's because you got stuck in the indulgence. You are growing up, your parents indulge you in Christianity, and you go, well, fuck that shit, I'm going over here. Well, there's good. Now you're supposed to integrate, but you've gotten traumatized, so you don't integrate. They've disrupted the process. Your parents made you eat vegetables your whole life, and you weren't allowed any candy. Oh, now you're as an adult, you're eating candy. You got to come down and integrate, but they fucked you up. They fucked up the process. You were forced to do all the studying when you were a kid, so that by the time you were 6th, 7th grade, you fucking hate school. Well, now as an adult, you're probably never reading any books. This is why. I love this. Books were banned in my house. I wasn't allowed books, so I indulged on books. I'm not coming down off of this. There's no integration. I now write books for a living and I read books, and it's because they denied me them. I'm not going to solve that. I'm well aware that I'm stuck over here in I'm going to learn everything. Okay, I never play and I'm a workaholic. I know this. This is why. Over and over again. When you go through this, you're actually going through the 12 ethical stages of growth. This is how. Now, money, scarcity mindset. When you are indulging, you are at a deficit For instance, when I was indulging on my Dorito chips, I was at a deficit for health food. Now, we're going to talk about authority for a minute. Authority is the core to all of this. 100% of all of this is compromised authority. Compromised authority. You know how I just said that you've got your comfort and you've got your learning and then you've got your save yourself. And that if you have that down with your fear, learn, courage. Yep. So you have your fear, your learn, and your courage. That they all comfort each other. Well, what I postponed telling you at that point was that authority is the ruling lord of all of this. Authority, specifically self-authority. It is common knowledge among psychologists that self-authority is at the core of all trauma. And that's true. Self-authority, when it's been compromised, leads to trauma. That's all it is. Trauma is when your self-authority has been taken away from you, period. When you have no self-authority, when someone compromises your self-authority, game over. Now, here's the problem. We live in a society of non-consensual education, non-consensual silence, non-consensual loyalty. When this happens, our self-authority has been compromised. Non-consent is rape. Rape does not mean sexual. It can be, but it's not. Rape means basically non-consent. That is what it means. It's forced without authority. Something that is forced without authority. I type in rape definition and all I get is help available, sexual violence. It doesn't actually define it. So the internet is not literally giving me a definition. It's just giving me all these helplines. Rape means forced without consent. It's the forcing. Force is a word we use in physics. If you want to study psychology, you got to know physics. Without consent. What's going on in the physics of the mind? What's going on in the economics of the mind? When you are in that learning, indulge, scarcity, you have to consent to the indulgence. And you have to consent to the scarcity. Are we all listening? Money. You have to consent. Without consent, it's rape. I am a master of what's going on in the mind during rape. All kinds. I am well aware of the psychology of rape. It comes down to either indulgence or scarcity. Another thing you can look at, well, it's avoidance. Indulge or avoid. Or abundance and scarcity. Now, abundance is just as toxic. It's not really toxic as scarcity. The problem is you have trauma associated with abundance, or you have trauma associated with scarcity, indulgence and avoidance. So if you were traumatized while you were forced to indulge on something like religion, I was forced to indulge on religion. I had gotten enough religion and I was ready to go over to atheism, and I was forced to stay in religion longer than I wanted. Non-consensual religion. My daughter has to learn US government. It's non-consensual. So she is now being forced to indulge in a subject she doesn't want to learn because she's being forced to learn it out of order. US government history doesn't happen until after she is supposed to learn arts, logic, physics, then into language, and then history. But she was not allowed to learn physics. They took that away from her. And as a result, she never got the indulgence she needed to flip over to language, to flip over to history. But now they're forcing her to flip over to history before she's ready because they have disrupted the natural progress of Mother Nature's learning cycle. So now she's non-consensually learning US history when she doesn't want to. Now it's non-consensual education. Now she has trauma associated with history. Thanks, government. So when you have forced indulgence, two things are happening. When you have forced scarcity, two things are happening. There are two sides to this always, because it's not just the indulgence. It's not just the avoidance. In order to indulge, you have to avoid something. If you are indulging in minimalism, you are also avoiding abundance. So it's not about money. It's about abundance. Now, if you sit down and you look at your life, every human being is this way. If you were to sit down and write a list of the things that you indulge in and the things you avoid, write a list of what do you indulge in and what do you avoid. Your love language is the thing that you did not have enough of as a child. This is solid fact. There's been so much documentation on this. If you have a love language of gift giving, if your love language is giving, it's because you probably had no gifts as a child. If your love language is words of affirmation, you probably received no words when you were a child. The reason why is because you had a deficit of X. So as an adult, you're indulging. And that's it over and over again. Our entire lives revolve around the indulge and avoid. Go ahead. Indulge and avoid learning cycle over and over again. And when you start to learn about the indulge, avoid, integrate, you start to realize, oh, now do not try and bypass. And this is the problem with education. This is the problem with parents. They think they can bypass this. No, now you've caused trauma. It is an order of operations. This is literally our order of operations with learning. And they are fucking up with the order of operations because they don't know about it. They're trying to spare their child from heartache. Now you have an over-enabling parent. So they're trying to, they know best, and interfere now with Mother Nature, who actually knows best. So you have your indulgence and your avoidance. So they're going, no, you need to integrate. And they try and force the integration. You can't do that. That's not how we learn. It is literally a violation against nature herself. We don't learn like this. We have to suffer to appreciate. Integration takes away appreciation, priority, ethics, values, emotional development, evolution, growth. Don't fuck with Mother Nature. That's just going to be like my motto. Don't fuck with Mother Nature. She's got it all figured out. She dropped us on this planet with all the wiring in place, but parents and teachers think they know better, so they fuck it up. Indulge, avoid, integrate. And when you integrate, you're also avoiding the next stage, and then you indulge. And the 12 ethical stages are designed to do this. It carries you right through the process. It's fucking beautiful. Our education system follows it. Our psychology follows it. Our ethics follows it. Our education and knowledge follows it. Our development follows it. Our growth follows it. Our societal evolution follows it. Don't fuck with Mother Nature. And when you do, now you're in black and white thinking and you're traumatized to avoid the other thing because someone fucked with Mother Nature. So this is how you fix it. How you fix it is indulge. Whatever it is you want, indulge. Glutton yourself. Mother Nature said so. Glutton yourself. And it's going to be 2 to 3 years of gluttony. Allow yourself the gluttony. Get sick of it. You want to feel the emotion boredom and disgust. That's your goal. Get to boredom and disgust. Love something so much that you get bored and disgusted with it. And then you'll flip over to avoidance. While you're avoiding, you're going to learn to appreciate it on a different level. But you can't reach that level unless you avoid it. But you can't avoid it unless you indulge it. It's literally a chain fucking reaction. It's chemistry. Literally, this is chemistry. This is chemistry and physics. You cannot fuck with this. For every action, indulgence, there is an opposite and equal reaction, avoidance. If you try and fuck with the reaction to control the avoidance, well, first you've got control issues, and B, seriously, you are fucking up with Mother Nature because Mother Nature wrote the books of physics and you're fucking with it. And if you think you know better than physics, good luck with that. Now you have mental illness. All mental illness is resulted from this problem. So, when you have a problem with money, it is because two things. The first problem is you grow up with indulgence, forced non-consensual indulgence. And then you got locked into this concept of scarcity and you're stuck there. You need to unstick. Now there's another problem. Just like the word gluttony, dumb fucking church. They also felt that money was the root of all evil. So back around the 4th century, they started a campaign called Money is the Root of All Evil to brainwash people to give all of their money to the church so they could build cathedrals. And they did. Now it's embedded via subliminal messaging so deep in our culture that gluttony is wrong and money is the root of all evil. You've been brainwashed. That's why you have a problem with money. This brainwash is literally about 1600 years old. If you studied anything on the early Christian church and the Holy Roman Empire, it all comes down to this particular campaign that started from the papacy. Gluttony and money is the root of all evil. I'm not going to get into my hypothesis as to why this was done. A lot of people have no tolerance or interest in the Roman Empire, but there's a whole lot of reasons why this was done. Anyway, as a result, these two things, gluttony and money is the root of all evil, is the core in our culture. It is, our culture is built on it. The problem is, it is now forcing a significant poverty indulgence, forced poverty, and we've been brainwashed to want it. That is why you have a money problem. Is because you have been brainwashed to desire it and want it, as in want the poverty. And as a result, it has now created a class system because economics, supply and demand. Money is not in demand in our culture. It's not. Everyone wishes they could have it, but it's actually not coming because subconsciously, subliminal messaging has been embedded into you from infancy that says you're not supposed to have it. To overcome this, you're going to have to go fucking deep. But there's two major things in your way. The first thing that's in your way is guilt. The next thing that is in your massive way is words. We live in a culture where you can't go outside without some dumb fuck reminding you that money is the root of all evil. You can't go online without some stupid dumb fuck saying something like, oh, billionaires are horrible. So unless you cut yourself completely out of the society, you're going to be bombarded with the confirmation and the brainwashing over and over again. It's going to be in the newspapers. It's going to be online. It's going to be in articles you read. It's going to be everywhere. Money's the root of all evil. Money's the root of all evil. And then you got to deal with the guilt. Now, the guilt, in my opinion, is easy because guilt is just, you don't belong here. Get the fuck out. And you kick it out. For me, that's how I handled it because it's not me. It's a parasite. So my way of handling guilt is it's a disease. And I use the emotion disgust to stamp out certain things in my body, in my brain. I strategically use the emotion disgust. Disgust comes from our ethics. Some ignorant moron decided to call disgust related to poison, and it's not. Not at all. It's related to our ethics. Disgust comes from our ethics. It's why we are disgusted at pedophilia, is because it violates our ethics. We're not being poisoned. You want to talk about a logical fallacy? This is logical fallacy in point. People claim that disgust is linked to poisoning. No, it's not. No one's being poisoned when you hear about pedophilia, but it disgusts you. So you tell me who's being poisoned. No one, because it's not about poison. What it is about is ethics. They're violating your core ethics, and it's fucking disgusting. As a result, you have an emotion called disgust, which is like level 10 of your ethics are being violated. When we are given broccoli to eat and children go, eh, it's because it's a learned response, because their parents go, eh, and we see it on TV where we go, eh, and the law of reflection has taken over. So sometimes the law of reflection in physics interferes with our ethical programming. We see this also with laughter. Laughter, those fucking laugh tracks. Laughter has two sources. One, I have no idea. I'm still trying to figure out laughter. I do believe it has to do with surprise, shock, and then irony. That's when you legitimately laugh at something that is funny. And it's a learned response over here. Law of reflection. You see other people laugh, therefore you laugh. So laughter has two cores. You've got your trained response, and it's actually legitimately funny. If you're a monkey, you literally, it's our parroting behavior. That's when we laugh when it's trained. When you are independent and you don't laugh on cue, it's because you're smart. This is how you tell a modern Neanderthal from a smart person. Is a modern Neanderthal will laugh because everyone's laughing, even though they don't know why. If you are a smart person, then you will laugh because it's funny. Same thing with disgust. We train our children to go to broccoli because so many people go to broccoli. Has nothing to do with being poisoned. That's some dipshit knowing nothing about psychology. Ethics is where disgust comes from. When you have disgust, it creates a warning that your ethics are being violated. If you hear about someone you admire doing something horrible, you feel disgusted. This is why. It's because they're violating your ethics. It's a warning to you that your ethics are under violation. The reason why this is important is because guilt has nothing to do with your ethics. Disgust does. Guilt only comes from one thing: a third party's invasive, toxic, parasitic virus being embedded into your mind. It is not you. It is a virus. That is what guilt is. 100%. It is a contamination of somebody else's opinion. Guilt is a virus. So when you feel guilt, it's a disease inside of you. I used this logic to go, oh, that's getting out of me. And now when I feel guilt, I go, oh, that's a disease. I'm throwing it out. And I throw it out because it doesn't belong in me. I disconnect from what the guilt is trying to condition into me. And I say, no, that's psychological manipulation. So I walked away with a really clever trauma trigger called psychological manipulation. I can't be around it. If I am around any kind of psychological manipulation, I feel fucking disgusted because it violates my ethics. So I use disgust in my ethics to override guilt. I use logic to purposely use my ethics and disgust to combat fear, guilt. I'm going to say this part again. I strategically use logic to condition my disgust and ethics to combat fear and guilt. This is how I do it. You have your cognitive core, which is 5 parts of you. You have your identity. I ethically love identity. Identity also has my intuition, and she has my defense system. These 3 beautiful people make up my identity. They are my joy, and they are my love. Ethics is what I know for me is right and wrong. I don't need a God to tell me that shit. I think on my own. I don't need a heritage or a culture to tell me that shit. I think on my own. I have used Mother Nature's 12 ethical stages of perspective growth to tell me what is right or wrong. So Mother Nature tells me when something is right or wrong. There are 12 ethical core ethics. One of those is self-preservation, because I love me. Now, I have a list of what is right and wrong inside of my head. And the next stage is logic and the belief system. Now, I know that guilt doesn't belong to me. I pride myself, and my ethic is mental health. I absolutely have mental health as the top priority because I learned that if you don't have solid mental health, you don't function at all ever in any subject in this world. Therefore, mental health is the number one concern and value of all. Because if mental health doesn't work, you don't work. Everything in your life is a symptom of your mental health. That is how vital your mental health is. You are physically healthy only because you are mentally healthy. Because placebo effect is a real big fucking deal. And there are 4 proven medical conditions that prove that your subconscious mind governs all. So mental health is, in my world, the Lord of all, which means mental health first, everything else secondary. Because if mental health isn't functioning, nothing is. Therefore, when something violates my mental health, I get pissy. Guilt violates my mental health. Easy peasy. Guilt is a violation of that ethic. It's a disease. It doesn't belong in me. It has no purpose because disgust is the emotion I use to tell me when something's wrong. I don't use guilt because I know guilt doesn't belong to me. Guilt belongs to my mother, who told me I was going to go to hell if I don't believe her fucking religion that I don't need because I've got my ethics. Guilt is garbage. G for guilt. G for garbage. So when guilt comes into my mind, I get disgusted because it's violating my mental health. So now I very easily go, oh, no, 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 no. Your presence, disgust trumps guilt. Ethics trumps guilt. Logic trumps guilt. So I use my logic to rationalize this really awesome argument. I link it to my disgust, which I know is part of my ethics, and then I kick guilt out of my body. So every time I feel guilt, I'm like, no, get the fuck out of here. You are violating my mental environment. So that's guilt. Now, fear. Fear is a horribly misunderstood emotion. This is what you are supposed to do with fear. Fear is the emotion that tells you you are supposed to learn. Fear equals learn every time. But if you have education trauma, you are not learning, most likely. And because you are not switching over to problem solving and logic, you are most likely becoming panicked. You might be dealing with trauma. You are probably suffering from amnesia. You might be battling the flop response, the fear response. I don't believe in the fear response. The reason why I don't believe in the fear response is because if your defense and discernment were working properly, you would use the so-called fear response. This is what I call sloppy psychology. If you are using your anger, your defense, and your discernment properly, you would run away. And you would fight. That's not fear. That's the defense system's anger system. That is discernment. You should be running away. It's called denying access to what is dangerous to you. It's very good. You should be fighting. That is using your boundaries to defend your territory so you're safe. You then should use discernment to get back to your comfort zone where you energize with joy and ground yourself with love so you remember who you are. That gives you proof of concept that you can save yourself. Now you're back to the first ethic. Now you're back over to the indulgence. Now, when you feel safe enough, you're going to get the emotion boredom. When you get boredom, you switch back over into the adventure zone. That's where you learn. That's where you show yourself that fear doesn't exist, and it doesn't. And then when you get overwhelmed or afraid, you're supposed to run back to mommy. Mommy is you going back to your comfort zone. That way you can get more joy and love to remind yourself who you are. And then you get bored again and you run back into the adventure zone until you feel overwhelmed and or afraid, and you do it again. And every time you go through this cycle, you learn a lesson. You integrate A with B. And that's how you learn. Now, the brainwashing that's inside of you regarding money. I am huge on fight fire with fire, which means in order to overcome money, you need to really put in positive affirmations about money. There's two sources to a belief. You have the conditioned response, which is a lack of knowledge, which is what we are covering right now. The second thing that we cover is the logical fallacy. And logical fallacies are actually desperate fears in disguise. These fears are so desperate to control you, to keep you safe, that it has lied to you and embedded false information inside of your logical system. So now, to help you nurture your poverty mindset and your scarcity mindset, it triggers a severe fear response every time you approach money. But it is so fucking deep inside of you because of our culture that it's really hard to overcome while you are in the culture. You're going to have to become highly selective and massive amounts of boundaries to say, fuck off, I don't want to hear it. Don't put that shit in my head. Every time you hear something, you consent to putting it in your head. Every time you hear something, you consent to putting it in your head. Every time you see something, you consent to putting it in your head. You're using your authority left and right without you even realizing it. Every time you hear something, every time you see something, you consent to putting it in your head. How selective are you with what you hear and see? Most people aren't. Most people are not using discernment. Most people trust Hollywood directors to put whatever the fuck they want in their heads. We are not making good choices to decide what we hear and what we see. Most people think words don't matter. Words, I'm trying to figure out a way to explain how important words are. I have all this evidence, but it's compiled in components, and I want to put it into one big omniscient point of view and just give you one sentence and say, here you go. I'm very angry today. I'm I'm very angry. I can feel it. I'm always cold and bitter whenever I'm angry. This is a very difficult subject for me. The whole education part is because I am self-taught and I was bombarded by a bunch of invalidating idiots all my life that I should not, they convince us that we need permission to use our own brains, that if you are not qualified, that you are not capable of using your own brain. It is the biggest cutting the legs out from under you that exists in our culture. I need to just talk about this because this is it. There are people who have a responsibility and they are ignorant. What do we call it? imposters. They are imposters. And they are so ignorant that they don't even know they are ignorant. But they're fake. They are imposters. And when you have ignorant imposters, people who claim to be professionals when they're not, people who are so ignorant as to be on that status of, oh, I'm a professional, when in fact they know jack and shit about what they're doing, it causes significant harm. I have an ethic, a very strong ethic, that if you are in a position of power and authority, you had better know your fucking shit. And there's a lot of people who don't. So the very first thing they do is they lie to us. They cut our legs out right from under us by telling us, you can't learn without me. That's narcissism. You need me. That sentence, you need me, is the core of all narcissism. Teachers use it. You need me to learn. That's narcissism. A lot of professionals use it. You need me. The problem with the phrase, you need me, is it destroys the self. It's crippling. It is every single time. It is 100% coming from somebody with an invested interest. And that's my problem with it, is they have an invested interest. They're making money from your disbelief. They're making profit from your disbelief. This violates my ethics on such a level that it fucking disgusts me. The disgust is so substantial that it makes me angry, because it's what kept me enslaved for 40 years. And I love people. My God, do I love people. However, there are many types of people. There are the people who are ignorant imposters, who are so uneducated they don't know they're uneducated, claiming to be professionals when they're not. So you have the ignorant imposters who are causing most of the problem. Many of them are in the medical field. They have a vow, an oath that they are breaking. I'm Scottish. Vows and oaths are vital to me. In addition to that, you have people who now believe the ignorant imposters, and as a result, they are crippled mental paraplegics, dependent upon spoon feeders. Ignorant imposters are spoon feeders because they have a job so long as they spoon feed. So they want you to be crippled to require spoon feeding. And they're so ignorant that they will literally soak up whatever they're told. And then they think they're doing no harm. And then they think they know better. And it took me 40 years of digging around their bullshit for me to figure this shit out. And their lies were so deeply embedded into our culture that it took me 40 fucking years to figure it out. When I figured it out, I went, oh. And then I could see how they were the obstacle while they claimed to help, because they taught me that I needed them. Fucking disgusting. Then you have the people who are like me. It's probably you. I am fucking angry. You should be too. You probably are. You want healthy. You want to be healthy. I wanted to be healthy. It should not be this fucking hard. It's not. The subconscious mind is not complex. It is very simple. My AIDNS is 5 steps, 5 parts. Fucking easy. But if it's easy, then you don't need the people who are selling their alternative medicine. Now they're interfering. Now they're getting in the way. Now I'm pissed because they cost me a shit ton. And then I have people, beautiful people like you, coming to me, emphasizing the same frustration, saying the same thing to me that I discovered. You're only a few steps behind me. And I am where I am without somebody like me at the front going, this is what's going on. And when I got here, I went, no. I did not use a goddamn drop of psychology to get where I am. Psychology did not do anything to my mind. I didn't use psychology. I used philosophy. I used logic to cure me. I did not use psychology, not a drop, with the exception of cognitive behavioral therapy, which was inadequate. So I had to supplement it with meditation, with positive affirmations, with Tai Chi, and with logic, because it was that fucking insufficient. It was still good, and it was the basis, but again, it was so incomplete. Aside from that, aside from Dr. Aaron Beck's work and Dr. Nathaniel Brannon and Dr. Aziz Gazapura, the rest of psychology got in my way to my own healing. It was a hindrance. I read Walking on Eggshells. It discouraged me. It made me feel like shit. It made me feel like a disease. I got my diagnosis. It made me feel like a fucking freak. I went to therapy. They told me there was no cure. They were the obstacle to all of my healing, all of it. And when I got rid of them, oh, did I heal fast. That was the first fucking clue that something was up. That's when I decided to create my own program, completely away from psychology. I used physics, logic, and philosophy instead. And I went, oh, holy fucking shit, I am not a psychologist. Fuck that shit. I know what I'm doing. And I fixed my brain. I taught myself how to learn without any educator. My educators were the ones who told me that I can't read books. I have had police officers, psychologists, and teachers fuck me up and get in my way right behind my parents. These were the people who claimed to help, and they deceived me. And you're frustrated too. You're here at the end and you're going, it can't be this easy. It can't be that simple. Yes, it is. It absolutely is. It's very fucking simple. They don't want you to know that, but hey, Newton, in simplicity, there is truth. If it's complicated, they're lying to you. Narcissist 101. So yeah, I have a really big fucking problem with a lot of things out there right now. And the more I go through this every day with you, the more I sit down, the more their lies become more and more apparent. So I'm sitting here going through every lesson, and my logical brain is going, do you know what this means? Do you know what this means? Do you know what this means? And I'm going, oh my God, they're lying this much. Oh my God, they prevented it this much. And the truth is just unfolding as I go through every class with you. And this is what I'm not talking about. This is why I'm having a lot of anger with every session, and I'm getting angrier and angrier because the logic is undeniable. Either they're so fucking stupid or they're that fucking manipulative, and I still can't figure out which. So I'm just going, I don't know what's going on. All I know is I don't trust them. And the more I do my research in philosophy, physics, and logic, the more I'm going, they don't have a fucking clue what they're doing. And they're causing severe damage when they've taken an oath. So it's violating my ethics. And when I learned about the indulge, avoid, and integration, when I saw in philosophy, physics, and in mathematics and geometry, and in economics, how all of this links to psychology, how all of that, and I hate to use the word psychology. Psychology means the logic of Psyche. Psyche was a goddess married to Eros, and they have forgotten this. It doesn't mean the study of science means to study. Do etymology, use the right words. Science means to study. Logi, as in not philosophy. Psychology means logic of. It means the study is over and they have the logic of it. Logi means logic of something because it's logical. There isn't a goddamn fucking thing logical in psychology. It's chaos. To quote Jose Silva, it's just a bunch of giants disagreeing. After 4 years of studying psychology, he threw it out and said, this is garbage. And then he did neuroscience to prove his work, because that is how useless psychology is. And it's so useless that it hindered my healing for 5 years. So, and every time I do another class, every goddamn time I get into philosophical and I do one more session, I'm just sitting here going, I can't ignore the evidence of how fucked up what they're doing is. And it hindered me so deeply. And every day it's a new discovery. Every time I do a class, it's a new discovery at the depths of what's been lied to me, because the logic is blaring. The evidence is overwhelming. And I'm not talking about that. And I'm just getting angrier and angrier. And I'll calm myself down. I'll step away and I'll go, why am I so angry? And I'll talk to my beautiful friends about it. And then I just have this point where I'm going, what is it? And what it is the logic is undeniable. That the more I learn about education, it's becoming more and more apparent at how ignorant they are. And not only ignorant, but damaging and destructive. And take a step back. Omniscient point of view, just look at the world. The evidence is overwhelming. The evidence is so overwhelming. It's like the people at Topps in the 1980s. When they decided to disrupt the supply and demand change. And I'm going, dipshits, you're in marketing. You are in fucking marketing. You should know better. Why, if you are in the baseball profession, would you ever alter the supply and demand? Did you not study economics? No, they did. They were taught by ignorant educators. Bad teachers. You've got one job. How can a bad teacher even exist? You have a job, education, transferring knowledge from point A to point B. And the more I go through my work, the more I'm walking you through these arguments, the more I'm going, oh, holy fucking shit. We're being educated by a bunch of egotistical narcissists who are manipulating us and cutting our legs out and then screaming at us why we're not running. What the fuck? And it's the madness of the world. And I'm going, okay, so I just need to validate, this is healing. I need to validate my ethical violation here. That's what it is. I just need to validate that my ethics every day are being violated. That the logical evidence is pouring into my work every goddamn time I go through a formula and I go, oh my God. The logic, the math, and the physics proves that psychologists, therapists, and educators are absolutely enabling destructive people without even knowing it, because ignorance is dangerous and the physics doesn't lie. And that's it right there. Ignorance is so fucking dangerous. And I'm just looking at this violation of my ethics and I'm going, how do I deal with this substantial problem? I'm dealing with it. I'm learning it, but I haven't validated it. I'm saying everything else. I'm saying all the components. You can't name the component. Here's a clue. If you want to heal, you can't focus on the component. You have to focus on the whole. But you don't have the problem-solving skills, most likely, because our education system sucks. So you weren't taught problem-solving. Because if you can problem solve, you can figure shit out. And that's really what this comes down to. If you can problem solve, you can figure shit out. You don't need them. You can see what they're doing. And I'm just looking at this going, okay, all right. Ignorance is fucking dangerous. And it is so problematic today that even the professionals are fucking stupid. And they're causing severe damage. And they don't even know how. They don't even know why. They have no fucking clue. And I'm going, okay, I've got all this problem solving. And this is something I have figured out with my education a long time ago. That if you want to figure out what's wrong, you can't name the components. You must be able to see the omniscient point of view over all the components. You have to integrate the components. When you avoid you have a component. When you indulge, you have a component. And when you avoid, you have a component. And when you integrate, you get a whole. Now you have one whole. Now you're going to indulge again. That's 3. And you're going to avoid again. That's 4. And now you integrate. You found another whole. And this is all we're going to do over and over again. You're going to avoid again. Now you got another component. And you're learning this component. And now when you integrate, you create a whole. Now, one more time. You're going to indulge, component, avoid, component, and then integrate. And you've got one more whole. Now you've got 4 wholes. Integrate the wholes. And when you integrate the wholes, what you get is another whole. Every one of these ethics is a component of 3 components. I'm sorry, it's 3 components of one whole, which is just another component. And when you are done with these 12 steps, you have 4 wholes, which are also components. And when you integrate those 4 components, you get one more whole. Now you can name it self-love. It's beautiful. These 12 ethical stages are the components of self-love. I'm going to say that again. The 12 ethical stages are the components of self-love. So that as you go through this learning process of indulge, avoid, and then integrate, you have just learned 1, 2, 3 components. And when you integrate those 3 components, you have learned another component called trust. Now you've got to integrate those. But we're not done yet. You go through it again. 4th ethic, 5th ethic, 6th ethic. You learn self-government. You learn accountability. You learn equality. Integrate them. You've learned justice. Oh, but they're still just components. Do it again. And you learn silence. You learn listening. You learn talking. And then you learn integration, sharing. And that teaches you empathy. But they're just components one more time. You do it again. So you learn emotions and you learn logic. And then you learn the integration of those. And that gives you love. And then you've got all of these components and you combine them again. You don't get love. You get forgiveness. You get forgiveness. When you combine the 10th ethic, the 10th ethic with the 11th ethic, the emotions with logic, you get forgiveness. When you combine trust, justice, forgiveness, and empathy, you get self-love. That is the ethical components that make up self-love. That's why you don't love yourself, is because you have lost all 12 ethics, because you haven't gone through the process, because you have to indulge, avoid, and integrate. And you haven't, because the educators who claim they know better than you have fucked this up and have interfered with your ability to evolve and grow. And then when you go seek out help, you're told that you can't heal because they are so fucking ignorant they don't know. Yes, you can heal. And it's simple. You don't need them. All you need is the steps. And they're really fucking simple. This is DIY done so easily that all you need is you. You don't need a therapist. You don't need drugs. You don't need help. You can save yourself. Only enablers tell you that you can't. That's how you know not to trust them. And I had the same fucking lies rammed down my throat. And it kept me a prisoner because they chopped my legs out from under me. They blinded me, and then they punished me for not being able to run. They called me crazy because of what they did to me. They made me crazy, and then they punished me for it. And it wasn't until I finally got the fuck away from them that I was able to finally step back and do it on my own, and I figured this shit out. And it's this massive what the fuck. And I'm now going through the physics. I could feel it. This is the order of operations. I could feel it. You can feel it. It's your intuitive logic speaking to you. Listen to the logic, listen to the intuition. And then you can name it. But you got to get away from them because they lie to you. And when you name it, you start to understand shit. I put my logic into it when I started to name it. I added all of my logic. I knew my feelings were my intuitive logic. So, because that's taught by Aristotle in philosophy, that intuition and instinct is just logic. We have two levels of logic. We have our subconscious logic and subconscious math. We have subconscious physics inside of us. That's what ESP is. That's what energy reading is. That's when you feel someone with a good aura or a good vibe. That's physics. You can feel physics. And you can feel it so well that it's a part of your intuition. And then you have your conscious awareness that becomes aware of it. So as you start to study physics and math, which you can do if you learn in the right order, if educators would just back the fuck off and leave you alone, you'd be able to learn in the proper order so that you would be able to indulge, avoid, and integrate and learn and go through evolution properly without any interference. That by the time you get to physics, it's fun. It's easy because there's no educational gaps. Did you know that the periodic table of elements is physics? I learned that yesterday. I had a bunch of educators teaching me chemistry long before I was ready for physics. And I didn't understand chemistry, so I failed it. I thought I was stupid. I thought I couldn't learn. I, for a long time, avoided chemistry because I thought I was bad at it. I wasn't bad at it. The teachers were fucking incompetent. I have my physics books and I'm learning physics. And one of the very first things they give you in physics is the periodic table of elements, molecules, electrons. And I'm going, what the fuck is this doing in physics? Because it's physics. But they try to teach you chemistry without the physics. In fact, my school didn't even have a physics. There was no physics curriculum. I was pissed. I wanted to learn physics. You're supposed to learn physics. I was ready for physics. I had to self-teach myself physics through my music books that there was a whole process because I had to sneak those. I had to get them through another source. It was a fucking nightmare. So when you understand the order of operations when it comes to learning, taking care of yourself, reviving the DIY self-teaching and linking it up to Mother Nature, you're hardwired for this stuff. Mental illnesses are not supposed to exist. Mother Nature would never create something like that. She would not do that. Think about it. A mental illness is literally like a mental time bomb in your brain ready to go off at any single moment. Why would she ever put something like that inside of our minds? It still blows my mind. It still blows my mind. It's man-made, by the way. It's absolutely man-made. I have a very strong hypothesis that Socrates is the one who created certain mental illnesses as a weapon of warfare to give to Rome. Because that's what the military does. It pays geniuses to create weapons of warfare. The only reason why we have atom bombs is because the military wanted them, not because the scientists wanted them. The scientists had no interest in that. In fact, the scientists who created it had a whole lot of emotional, ethical guilt they had to overcome because the military fucked it up. All weapons of warfare are created by military, not by scientists. And I am a firm believer that mental illness is no different. They do not naturally happen. Law of reflection. I was watching a documentary about 15 years ago about this group of people who live in Canada. I am still dumbfounded over the psychology. These are people who grow up completely separate from all people. It is literal. They're isolated. They're nomadic. And they have basic essentials. They are bushcraft survivals. This group of people have lived for thousands of years like this. And they travel all over Canada. They're not Native American. They're not Native American, at least not that I know of. I have to go back on that. But they have a mule. They have some basic essentials. They do go into society. They get basic essentials, and then they go back into their culture. Their children never cry. Never. The culture, the tribe, it wasn't even a tribe. It was a man, a woman, and their child. And they wander. They never settle. Every day they walk a certain place, they stop, and they build shelter. And then they move to the next stage the next day. Everything is done based off of bushcraft and knowledge passed down. When they reach about 20 years old, they do step into society. They do learn a little bit about the society. The cultures around there are familiar with it, and then they go back into their nomadic. In most cases, they return to their nomad land. And their children never cry. I am still looking into the psychology of that one, going, why don't their children cry? Why do our children cry? Now, I'm looking at this culture going, these people are completely without any interference from society, and their children don't cry. This culture is as Mother Nature allowed. She gave it to us, and there we are. And I'm looking at it going, why don't their children cry? Mother Nature's got it all taken care of. They know not to interfere with it. We are only fucked up because other people think they know better and they disrupt the system. And the only reason why I got better was because I took a massive step back away from it and went, what the fuck is going on with my brain? And then I started to lay it all out, and I recovered Mother Nature's pattern. That's what my work is. I recovered Mother Nature's pattern. It doesn't belong to psychology. It belongs to nature. It isn't any great psychological anything. It's just physics and logic and math. And I went, oh, I found nature's subconscious mind as it was intended to be. Because society and my parents had fucked up my mind so much that I could use nothing from them. I had to build my entire brain back from scratch, back to Mother Nature. And when I did, I went, oh my God, it's. So now I've got this formula, this gorgeous, beautiful, perfect, breathtaking physics, logic, economics formula. And I give it to people, and it fixes their brain instantly. It's extraordinary. Their logic absorbs it. It hooks right up into their natural evolution. It drops all of the other shit, and it just goes through the process. And I'm going, look at that. It's literally a prosthetic subconscious mind that is restored as Mother Nature intended. It's extraordinary. And I built it on my own from scratch with deductive logical reasoning. It's mine. I say that because it did not come from any inspiration from psychology. It didn't. It didn't come from anything. It was just logically deducing it. It felt right, and I logically proved it. And then I found the answers in physics, not to prove my work, but because I knew physics, and I went, oh my God, this matches up to physics. Oh my God, this matches up to geometry. Oh my God, this matches up to the Cartesian coordinate system. And this matches up to the Fibonacci sequence. And this matches over and over again. It just matched. It wasn't based on anything. It's just logic. So when somebody takes credit for my work, when somebody claims that I pulled it from others, no, fuck that shit. This is my shit. Logical deduction, basic problem solving. And that's what fixed me. Problem solving is what fixed me. Problem solving is what they take away from us because they want you to think that you need them. So in this series, the comfort, the learn, the save, it's all about you learning how much you don't need anyone else except you. And this is what you need, and this is how to do it, and this is the beginning. This is the core. This is everything you need to get right down to the core of what is wrong with you and how to fix it, because it's just problem solving. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about this. What do you want out of this experience, making the most of it? This is something that I noticed is a question that should be at the beginning of every session, everything. And whenever you sit down and decide to do mental health or anything like that, you have options. You can choose to do mental health, job, career, dream home, family, relationships, money. You can say all of the above, and that's good too. So tomorrow I'm going to cover with you the mental health, the job, the career, the dream home, all of it, and how to integrate this work to get the desired results in all of these different fields, and how to make it applicable to literally each and every situation. So tomorrow on the Comfort, Learn, Save series, that's all we're going to cover is how to define what you want out of the experience, what your options are, and how to make this work for you in all aspects of your life. And as I go through more formulas, I'm probably going to get angry because while I'm walking you through the lectures and the series, I'm also calculating and making logical deductions in my head going, oh my God, the people who are ignorant imposters are interfering instead of helping. I can't stand people who claim to help when they're hindering. So I really needed to validate my ethics on that one. I really needed to just talk about my ethics on that one, because that was really just digging at me, is the substantial logical evidence that is now just pouring in, and it's overwhelming. And every day I just find more and more substantial evidence, and I'm not talking about it, and I'm just getting angrier. And that would be why. So thank you so much for your audience, and may the kindest of words always find you.